My hands are
So there's another team coming up? Yeah. So maybe we'll split up into like areas of the house.
Well, apparently by the virtue of these investigations and actions from the Department of Justice, we can only assume the diary is real. The contents, it's not only that we couldn't authenticate the diary, it's also that, you can't authenticate the events being described in the diary. It's very salacious stuff. I'm not sure I'm comfortable speaking about this stuff over the air. However, it's almost, we were put in a position, what are we supposed to do? We turned the diary over to authorities, and that apparently was not good enough. You talk about the laptop with Hunter Biden. I mean, that was something that the New York Times apparently recently has now acknowledged as legitimate. So the New York Times also acknowledged that the DOJ's action on us was highly unusual. So you're seeing kind of a consensus formed on some of these issues, and hopefully we need more journalists, more individuals, the freedom of press crowd. We need them to speak up on this.
RC, if this were to have happened, you say it doesn't happen to CNN and the New York Times. Of course, I believe you. They wouldn't stand for it, as you are not standing for it. But I believe that if the FBI had raided the homes in the Southern District of New York, had got all these secret warrants or orders to spy, I believe you would have heard from, for example, the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. I believe you would have heard from all sorts of journalism professors, ethics professors. There would have been calls for inquiries, judicial inquiries, maybe a congressional inquiry. A lot of people who care about the independence of journalists and protecting the First Amendment would have been rightfully outraged had this happened to, say, CNN or the New York Times. Have you at Project Veritas received any support from free speech groups or journalistic groups? Have they come to your aid in a way that we know they would have come to the aid of CNN?
Well, that's a good question, Ezra. It would be nice to see more support from some of these organizations. Some of these organizations, however, have spoke up in our support. The American Civil Liberties Union yesterday issuing a statement calling for the Department of Justice to immediately halt their review of seized devices and communications, calling this suppression, of these warrants unprecedented action. In the past, the Reporters Committee actually filed something to the court on our behalf, calling for more transparency on this matter. But again, it would be great to see more support. The Office of Government Accountability. There's a litany of other freedom of press. There are dozens of these or so organizations, and they have not spoken up on our behalf. And aside from a few individuals in the media, which I do give them credit, mainstream media journalists have spoken about this matter, there's been largely silence on this. So I hope other reporters who are listening to this is aware that, the pendulum often swings back and forth. There's always going to be someone who is in charge of government who, quote, may see your activities as a threat. And other journalists should speak up about this. This is an abridgment to the First Amendment. And if they don't speak up on this, they will be next.
Well, you're so right. I have to tell you, I am pleasantly surprised to hear that the ACLU and the Reporters Committee have said something, and that's better than nothing, and that's better than what we get up here in Canada. We have another clip. There was a little bit of in that presentation that we showed, narrated by James O'Keefe. Here's a little bit more for our viewers of the FBI raid, and I find this terrifying. I mean, I should just say, if there's any Canadian Mounties watching, I have no files at home. I don't take my work at home, so please don't raid my home. Don't raid our office either, by the way, but I should just tell you in advance, don't come to my home. So here's a clip, shocking, of the FBI raid in progress. Let's take a look.
My hands are
I'm saying you're really right here. So the one thing, for our safety and for yours, we're going to have you sit with you.
Yeah.
You do not have to speak to them. You're not being detained for safety. We're supposed to see. Your check, are you comfortable on that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
So there's another team coming up? So maybe we'll split up into like areas of the house.
Unbelievable. I think that was the kitchen there. Imagine storming in the house. It sounds like there's other family members there. Hands up, where? Let me see your hands. Just absolutely shocking and terrifying. You know, Russia's in the news a lot these days. That looks like something that would be done to a independent news organization or an independent political party in Russia. The fact that that's happening in New York is shocking to me, and I think it should shock everyone who cares about freedom.
Absolutely. I mean, the images speak for themselves. I mean, you pointed to the hands up, which kind of demonstrates that in a moment's notice, anything is possible. But further, in addition to that, you see officers with their hands clutched on their weapons. I mean, this is an American journalist here. This is an American journalist who would have willfully showed up at any court proceeding and surrendered information if that's what it came to. So you're right to say this is not the kind of treatment you would see in America. You also have to consider, Ezra, the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, just 8 months ago, did a whole rollout on new guidelines and how the press would be treated. And he talked about how, there would be certain tactics that wouldn't be used against journalists. Well, look at the tactics that were used against these journalists. It seems that Merrick Garland needs to answer for himself on this matter, because he can't have it both ways and pretend to protect press freedom and at the same time have a pre-dawn raid, show me your hands, with hands clutched on weapons.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.